You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
CYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. I hope that you're ready out there for a fantastic evening. I hope that you have not suffered some of the same problems that the Democrats are suffering in spades, because they really and truly are. Right at the top of the list here, last night we got to break the news that Donald Trump had in fact announced a brokered ceasefire between Israel and Iran. And those on the left, they just couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. A lot of individuals, well, that's not true. Some individuals over on the right side of the aisle couldn't believe it either. And we'll get to that. But as of the morning of June 23rd, the President of the United States decided that he was going to change the entire world via his cell phone and his Truth Social account. And by doing so, he pimp smacked the Russian Foreign Minister Medvedev on talking about possible nuclear devices being sent to Iran. That got just punched down, stuffed immediately. And then Trump says to the Department of Energy, drill baby drill, and I mean now, which is just the most American thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And then Trump gets out and announces a major ceasefire. Now, I'll be honest with you. The math on this made me struggle just a little bit. It was a lot of 6 hours plus 12 hours plus 6 hours kind of stuff. And Iran and Israel decided to push right up until the edge of that ceasefire timer. And Israel was flying some sorties over Iran, targeting some radar sites, and Iran was throwing a couple last-minute ballistic missiles. And there were some very smug faces online who began today by saying, well, see, Iran and Israel seem to be flouting some kind of ceasefire. It looks like Donald Trump has been fooled yet again. Only the catch was, no. The President of the United States was not happy one little bit. And this would end up, well, kind of breaking out in front of the press. Trump, of course, had tweeted out a couple of things on his Truth Social page, telling Israel to turn things around, telling Iran to stop it. And then a reporter asked him a question about how things were going. And it was at this very moment that Donald Trump was done. He was done with the media. He was done with the silly questions. He was done with the nonsense. Basically, he's any parent with multiple children around the same age. Here's the President of the United States this morning.
Violated the peace agreement and the ceasefire agreement. Do you believe that Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because the one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
And then a lot of jaws fell to the floor. Now, if you've seen private videos of the president before, you'll realize that he talks this way quite frequently. Not exactly shocking, but he is in fact exasperated, done reaching for the ibuprofen because, again, he had worked to broker this ceasefire deal. And then Israel and Iran went right up until the last minute here. And this is something that very greatly frustrated the president. And it appears that the messages hit home because then Israel and Iran promptly stopped. So given that this is in fact a very fragile ceasefire, but that it is a ceasefire, this would now be a ceasefire brokered by the President of the United States and two peace deals brokered in under 90 days. One between two African countries, one between India and Pakistan, and then, of course, this ceasefire between Israel and Iran, and also destroyed the Iranian nuclear program. I got to say, that if that's not grounds for the Nobel Peace Prize, but in fact, it was not immediately the Nobel Peace Prize that was thrust upon the president. Instead, what he got was a lot, and I just mean open the floodgates for all of this whining from the Democrats, which we'll get to. And it didn't really land because it was hours late. It didn't quite fit. And the president then continued on to NATO. He was at a big meeting at the Hague today in the Netherlands, and the press started peppering him with questions about, oh, do you think you're going to see Zelensky? What are you going to do? How about this, Donald Trump? I told you, as soon as he drops that F-bomb and gets on Marine One and then over to Air Force One, the dude's done. He's not having it. He's tired of these stupid and silly questions. Great example of that. Do you think you're going to see Zelensky there? And if so, what are you going to ask him? He doesn't take this well.
Do you think you'll meet with Zelensky when you're there?
Yeah, probably. I'll see him. Yeah.
What would you say to him?
Say, how you doing? He's in a tough situation.
I love it. I do. What are you going to say to him? I'm going to say hi. What in the world are some of these questions? And I have been at some of these gaggles before with senior officials. And in case you're wondering why there are some of these reactions, these reporters from different outlets, they ask the exact same question over and over and over and over again. And the president will give a decent answer, or the senior official will give, I mean, if it's not an answer the reporter wants, like they'll answer the question, and then immediately it'll be like, that'll be CNN asking, then a CBS News, and they ask the exact same question verbatim. And it's so obnoxious. Were you not just listening? Because what the reporter wants is the person from the senior official later to say, blah, 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 told this outlet, because journalistic outlets despise other journalists existing. It's really weird. It happens on the right, too. Elizabeth Mitchell, our White House correspondent, has told me exciting tales of the new media being just as petty and jockeying for position as though they're not going to get their questions answered. And it's a really goofy thing. Now, the goofiness is really what's good for the goose, good for the gander around and all over the world here, because President Trump is still not looking forward to seeing some of the silliness from, for example, both Zelensky and Putin.
You know, I'd like to see a deal with Russia. As you know, Vladimir called me up. He said, can I help you with Iran? I said, no, I don't need help with Iran. I need help with you. And I hope...
Trump is, in fact, not the weakling on the world stage that everyone was looking at due to the obstinance of Russia and the Russo-Ukraine war negotiations. The idea that because Trump had not been able to walk in, snap his fingers, and end the Russo-Ukraine war was taken by a lot of people in the United States as a show that he was essentially an isolationist weakling, by which I mean that he was so isolationist, he wasn't able to really do anything on the world stage. Anyone, for example, Netanyahu, could lead him around wherever he wanted, and essentially Trump was cucked by the world. And this was not true at all. Not true at all. And this comes into fruition when we start talking about NATO. So the president of the United States has made it a very big part of his policy that Europe needs to step up their funding. And so on the way to The Hague, the president puts forward a text. He just posts another dude's texts on social media. Who is this individual? Well, this is Mark Rutte, who is the Secretary General of NATO. He's a former Dutch Prime Minister. And he just takes a screenshot of this guy's text to the president and posts it online. Mark says, Mr. President, dear Donald, congratulations and thank you for your decisive action in Iran. This was truly extraordinary and something no one else dared to do. It made us all safer. You are flying into another big success in The Hague this evening. It was not easy, but we've got them all signed on to 5%. He means that all of the other countries in NATO are agreeing to pay 5% of their gross domestic product into funding the North Atlantic Treaty Organization so the U.S. doesn't have to cash in as much. He says, quote, Donald, you have driven us to a really, really important moment for America and Europe and the world. You will achieve something no American president in decades could get done. That is objectively true no matter what way you look at it. Europe is going to pay in a big way, as they should, and it will be your win. Again, this isn't just some American guy kissing up to Trump. It's the former Dutch Prime Minister. Safe travels and see you at His Majesty's dinner, Mark Rutte. Now, a lot of people don't quite understand why this matters. In geopolitics, really in politics in general, there's what's said in private and there's what's said in public. There are a lot of statements that are made in private that are very friendly, that actually reflect what a lot of people believe. And then you get out in front of the public and you start saying a bunch of things that realistically just are a really performative theater. For example, Saudi Arabia, right after the Israeli strikes on Iran and then after the US strikes on Iran, the Saudi Arabian government put forward a very small kind of tut-tut, we really don't like this kind of sort of action in the Middle East, while behind the scenes, Saudi Arabia watching Iran get thoroughly spanked, they were partying, throwing the biggest festival that you could throw in Riyadh. We'll talk about this more on the live stream. Radio crew, we got to send you to commercial. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, here's the fun part of this. When President Trump now lands at The Hague, the Dutch Prime Minister can't back out and say something kind of middling, which he has in the past, or the former Dutch Prime Minister, excuse me. So then he gets in front of NATO and essentially has to say the same thing in public now because President Donald Trump has put the private stuff in front of the entire world.
It will also be a massive achievement in making NATO fairer. For decades, the United States sought to get Europe to truly step up. Now, European allies and Canada will equalize their defense spending with the United States. So let me salute President Trump's long-standing leadership in calling for NATO to increase defense spending. Today, I am pleased to announce that NATO has already added an additional $1 trillion in defense spending over the past decade. Mr. President, dear Donald, that is thanks to you pushing us. And tomorrow we will build on that foundation and add trillions more in defense spending.
Now, wait a minute. I thought that Trump was supposed to come in. I was promised that he was going to come in and wreck everything and that we should leave NATO and that, oh man, the United States is really more against the ideals of NATO and they all hate us anyway. And so now Trump comes in and essentially says, remember who is paying your bills. Remember who keeps you safe. Remember who is footing the bill for a lot of your nonsense. Cough it up or go it alone. And Europe and a lot of the NATO organization as a whole is getting in line. Now, that's a major slice against what some other individuals have been telling you over the last couple of weeks. You have been told, I have been told, by a lot of pundits and historians, if that's what you want to call a washed up illiterate comic like Dave Smith, you have been told that the United States is at the mercy of the entire world, that our military is weak, and we could be easily bankrupted by some crazy Israel-Iran war that was going to turn into World War III. In fact, illiterate fools like Candace Owens, whose only ability is to talk pretty on camera, has not read anything of substance regarding history, regarding philosophy. She's done no research whatsoever. She regurgitates. That's Candace Owens' real talent. Got in front of the world and said, quote, "Get ready, white American men. It's time for you to go die for Israel again. If you don't want to die for Israel, then you are an anti-Semite. Sign up to die today in Iran for Netanyahu, or just admit you hate Jews. Trust the science." So Candace Owens and many others promised that we would all be going to die for Israel. She said on June 13th, "Our foreign policy is dictated by Israel. Trump will continue to do as he's told by Netanyahu. If you want to know what America will do, spare yourself the fake White House press briefings and start listening to Bibi. We are a colony of Israel." Now, I looked this morning at the president backhanding Bibi Netanyahu and Israel and saying, no, don't do this kind of stuff after I just brokered the ceasefire. Not giving them the just unlimited, unfettered support and oodles of United States involvement immediately. And by the way, the key reason that I'm throwing a lot of heaping scorn at individuals like Candace Owens and Dave Smith and that entire crew is because they made solid predictions. And when I mean solid, I don't mean solid as though they could be relied upon. I mean, they made very specific predictions that the United States would be bankrupt, that we would be in this massive forever war like Iraq and Afghanistan, as though that's the only war that's ever happened. It's like the Vietnam syndrome now with Iraq and Afghanistan. And ignoring real history, real data, real updates as they were happening, they pushed this nonsense narrative and they goofed and they were wrong. So the next time we get to one of these conversations and they start telling you things from a group of people who do not read, again, they do not pay attention. Instead, they just start asking questions in goofball aluminum foil conspiracy theories. Don't listen to them. Ignore them because they have nothing at all to add. And so I've left that kind of nonsense aside for quite a while on the show because it's not useful. The United States, on the other side of things, is very, very supportive of the actions that President Trump took and is taking. Right now, and I do actually have this particular clip before we bring everyone back for a commercial here. of MAGA Republicans, those who are aligned with the America First policy agenda, it is 94% in favor of Trump's actions in Iran to 6. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, we're going to swing back and catch the radio crew. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
You know who's just a girl? AOC. While some of the right-wing isolationists, and I don't mean isolationists as in don't get involved in foreign stuff, I mean America's a really bad, scary place, and we need to apologize for World War II, and any war is immediately Iraq and Afghanistan, and oh, we have to go die for Israel, that crew, started sending forward a bunch of complaints that we needed to impeach Donald Trump. So comic Dave Smith, who again, doesn't actually read history, he can't even tell you what the sides were in World War II, decided to come out and say that he regretted voting for Donald Trump, but Donald Trump has betrayed MAGA, and oh, we need to impeach. And there were a couple of Republicans out there who got on this weird alliance with the far left, suggesting that it was therefore time to impeach Trump because he had violated the War Powers Act and he had not informed Congress about going to war here. No. In fact, that's not how that works at all. And one of the main proponents over on the left at not reading the Constitution and thinking that the president has to get in front of Congress and beg and plead for any kind of military strike or policing action whatsoever, aka alerting our enemies to every move of the United States, is Representative Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. And my oh my, the bad decisions that were made. So AOC gets kind of in front of the country and says, quote, "The president's disastrous decision to bomb Iran without authorization is a grave violation of the Constitution and congressional war powers. He has impulsively risked launching a war that may ensnare us for generations." No, not remotely true. Now, Trump takes her to the woodshed immediately. And if you're watching the live stream, good sweet Lord, the paragraphs this man put out. So he says, "Stupid AOC, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, one of the dumbest people in Congress, is now calling for my impeachment, despite the fact that the crooked and corrupt Democrats have already done that twice before." And then he basically proceeds to call her a silly little girl. And, says at the very end, after, again, just going off on her and the things that she does and does not choose to be outraged over, says, "So go ahead and try impeaching me again. Make my day." A little Clint Eastwood Dirty Harry there. And AOC's response to this is, quote, "Mr. President, don't take your anger out on me. I'm just a silly girl." Correct. You are, in fact, a silly girl. Take it out on whoever convinced you to betray the American people and our Constitution by illegally bombing Iran and dragging us into war. It only took you 5 months to break almost every promise that you made. Now, doesn't that sound just like a little bit familiar to some of the things that you've heard over on the right? You broke all your promises, Mr. President. You told us no more war. No, he said no more forever wars. No more nation building. No more boots on the ground because we're going to pretend as a country like AOC and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Jasmine Crockett believes that the fundamentalist Islamic terrorist in Iran, the mullahs, the ayatollahs, have the same values you do. They just want a little freedom. That if you just give them the opportunity, that they'll get jobs and play basketball in Damascus like Obama believed. Like George W. Bush believed, in the heart of every person in the world yearns for freedom. No, wrong. There are cultures in the world who are worse than others, period. Sorry, that's just the truth. And if you don't like it, good. That's a you problem. There are cultures on this earth that do in fact want to do terrible things to you and your family because you have and they have not. And they believe that by some divine mandate that they can take over your country like the Islamic Caliphate did or attempted to do multiple times. So, I'm sorry. Oh, how could he do something so dragging us into a war as though what? Iran's going to block the Straits of Hormuz with their ancient navy? Fly the F-14s that don't exist? By the way, when they suggested the Iranian parliament elected that they were going to block the Straits of Hormuz and send it to the Ayatollah, China's immediate response was to laugh at them openly. Because then Iran would have no navy, and China would have absolutely no proxies whatsoever to protect their oil out of the Middle East, which would mean that the United States could effectively, if it ever wanted to, cut off most of the oil going to China, which it couldn't abide. So China stepped in immediately, was like, Iran, no, you're the freak not going to do that. No, sir. So John Fetterman, after AOC, again, threatens to come out and impeach the president, John Fetterman remains the last member of the Democratic Party who is not completely stupid. And, roasts her pretty mercilessly here.
Alexandria Ocasio Cortez says the president shouldn't be impeached because he's impulsive. What do you think of that?
No, I mean, of course, no. She knows it. I know it. We all know it. That's not going anywhere. And, he's been impeached twice, and now he's still our president as well now, too. So it's not going anywhere, and I don't think that's helpful. And I think if you throw that term around, that actually diminishes the severity of what impeachment is really reserved for.
So Fetterman makes an incredibly astute point here, which is that the left strategy, which is claiming that Donald Trump and anyone they disagree with is a fascist, is a Nazi, is everything is World War II, and so everyone is either Chamberlain or FDR or Hitler. Those are the only three historical figures that they know. Much like how, again, the hyper-isolationists over in some parts of the right, that 9%, believe that everything is Iraq and Afghanistan. It turns out, it just so happens that there's a little bit more to history than those two chapters. The left hasn't figured this out. And so they're doing the same thing with impeachment. And after they have said impeachment, 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 now they have annoyed the rest of the country. So bringing forth articles of impeachment now means nothing whatsoever. And as for their future actions, it doesn't even appear that the rest of the House is learning this either. Jasmine Crockett is so upset. She's running around to events claiming that actually she should be the one making all of the decisions. How could Donald Trump not speak to the great, amazing Jasmine Crockett?
And to understand enough about the Constitution to the extent that I'm the one that's supposed to make a fucking decision or at least get a vote.
Again, the War Powers Act does not work like that at all, whatsoever. Yet she wants to be the one making the decision, or I should at least get a vote. Yeah, sure. She then decided that the real issue with the United States bombing Iran is the cost. Oh, the money. Oh, how could they spend money on a military action? Oh, the horror.
Money. Let me tell you, just dropping those few bombs in one day, that was the beginning of what is going to be a very long bill for us as they talk about being efficient. There was nothing efficient about doing it. And maybe if there was some consultation.
I'm sorry, I'm going to break into her run-on sentence here. Is that a different accent than the one that she was using in the video? Hold on.
And to understand enough about the Constitution to the extent that I'm the one that's supposed to make a fucking...
And to understand that I'm the one doing the conversation. Okay, and then we've got, what's the other one?
And maybe with those that say have constitutional authority, since we care about the Constitution, then maybe we could have saved the American people not only...
She's so fake. It's so fake. And also, again, her tailor, I don't know who told her to scalp the Michelin Man and wear his arms as her sleeves, but my God.
Money, but the lives that are now at risk as we have to put out warnings for American citizens in this country and abroad.
Oh, miss me with that. Miss me with that. Radio crew, sorry, we got to send you over to commercial. We'll continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. We have to put out warnings for Americans around the world. I will remind you that Joe Biden broke the record for the most U.S. embassies evacuated in this nation's history during one administration. That at the time I had written that article and done that investigation, Biden had evacuated in like a period of a year and a half, like 15 different U.S. embassies due to separate security concerns because of how awful the State Department's diplomatic processes were. So, American citizens don't feel safe around the world. Get out of here. Get out of here. And the cost of it. Yes. Do you know how upset Jasmine Crockett was when Biden sunk $150 million into this Gaza pier that sunk to the bottom of the Mediterranean? Oh, that's right. She wasn't concerned about that at all. As her concern is as fake as her accents. And speaking of goofy accents, Al Green is back. You know, the guy that is shaking his cane, that was mad. Well, the guy that was kicked out of Trump's first State of the Union style speech because he stood up and started yelling and shaking his cane. He's back for new impeachments. Woo!
Mr. Speaker, and still I rise. And I rise today in the name of government of the people, by the people, for the people. I rise today because our country is nearing a moment of decision. I rise because we are at the intersection of democracy and autocracy.
I'm sorry, he brings forth impeachment articles. That's the whole thing. And by the way, they end up voting on the impeachment later, and it falls flat on its face. Like 2/3 of the Democrats join Republicans in just not voting at all in favor of the impeachment preceding excitement of AOC with her weird daddy issues for Donald Trump. Jasmine Crockett with her exciting new hooked on phonics racial accents. And then Al Green with his
I rise to announce.
All right, sorry, this is his last time that he announced the impeachment proceedings.
That the movement to impeach the president has begun. I rise to announce that I will bring articles of impeachment against the president for dastardly deeds proposed and dastardly deeds done.
I'm sorry, I'll never get tired of that. For dastardly deeds done. Them dastardly deeds. It's like discount Sanford and Son. It's insane. I love it so much, though. All right, so just to make this clear, the Democrats in the House have no idea what they're doing whatsoever. They really, you'd think that this was kind of coordinated because this is supposed to be a thing the Democrats have in spades. This is what they're supposed to do. This is something that on the right has been kind of a truism for decades. The Democrats always have their ducks in a row. They're always right on the money. They're making things happen. They're trying to articulate a certain point and not really, go any other different directions from that. And they really have no leadership whatsoever. Now, this comes because of a couple of reasons. Number one, it's because the Democrats have never articulated why Donald Trump is a big, bad, stinky fascist man. Because the older Democrats, when they associate Nazism and fascism, to them, it's anti-Semitism. And so you have people like Jamie Raskin, who are still to this day trying to claim that somehow Donald Trump has this big history of hating the Jews.
Trump himself has a disturbing history of anti-Semitic actions. He invited over to his house.
Wait a minute. He doesn't have an easel? I didn't know. Can you imagine telling your parents, I'm going to go work in Washington, and he's just got somebody holding up a big Elon Musk and the supposed Nazi salute that then 4 other Democrats did in the next month. Sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
For dinner at Mar-a-Lago, Nick Fuentes, a vicious neo-Nazi and Holocaust denier.
By the way, Nick Fuentes hates Donald Trump at this point, has denounced him, tried to get people to not vote for him, has called Trump all of the exceptionally dirty things that one can indeed call a guy. Sorry, we're going to head back to commercial break. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
The Democrats just have nobody. I mean, you've got Jamie Raskin claiming Trump's, this big anti-Semite. You've got the goof troop from Jasmine Crockett to AOC to Al Green trying their dastardly deeds, impeachment proceedings. Then you've got Hakeem Jeffries. He's the House Minority Speaker, by the way, the House Minority Leader. He's supposed to be the champion of the opposition party. This is supposed to be his role. But as I've told you, and many other who are older and wiser than I have said, there are really only 2 political parties in the country right now. You have the fiscal hawk Republicans, and then you have the more populist Republicans. Those are the 2 parties in the country right now. And on a totally different, not even side of the aisle, in a totally different room, yelling at each other and splattering paint all over the walls, you have the Democrats, who no one takes seriously right now. At all, whatsoever. And the key reason no one takes these fools seriously is because they have no leadership. They have none. Because how Hakeem Jeffries could somehow equate Donald Trump is an anti-Semite, but also the Jews are bad view that AOC and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar take, how you're supposed to take those two things and meld them together, along with tariffs are bad, but they're good, along with LGBTQ stuff is our whole deal, but also women's rights. He can't fit that together. So Hakeem Jeffries has instead been reduced to this weird hollow shell of a man trying to answer media questions in a very smug way, but he doesn't know the answer. So it's like trying to, I used to have students who I would call on in the middle of class. They had no idea what they were doing. They weren't paying attention. Not paying attention is one of the reasons I called on them. And they would try to answer my question while repeating my question back to me. And it was really, really embarrassing for the student. That's Hakeem Jeffries trying to reason Donald Trump being really bad about the Iran strikes and constitutional authority.
Donald Trump and his actions, which do not appear to be consistent with the United States Constitution, takes unilateral offensive military action.
Unilateral offensive military action. The word unilateral is not needed there at all. The president has Article 2 authority in the Constitution. Not at all needed. Unilateral, not necessary. He's making things up at the get-go. It's when you know it's going to be a rough statement for Hakeem, which in other words is every statement from Hakeem.
Without seeking the approval of the United States Congress, the use of military force, which is offensive in nature, must be approved by the House and the Senate. That's according to the Constitution. It's not optional.
Okay, I'm not going to waste everyone's time by waiting for William Shatner to get through his speech here. Producer Nick also points out that's on C-SPAN too. This is how down the Democrats are. They don't even put the opposition up on C-SPAN 1. Now, C-SPAN 2 is not bad. You know, I have watched C-SPAN 2 a time or two. It's not as bad as C-SPAN 3, you know, down near the Ocho in Corncob TV. But at least as far as Hakeem is concerned, at least he hasn't, you know, announced a plan to not condemn the Los Angeles riots. That would be political suicide.
How are you planning to vote on the resolution to condemn the LA riots?
I haven't seen that resolution, but obviously I disagree with the classification, which of, you know, the notion that there were riots in Los Angeles.
Oh, they weren't riots, you know, just, you know, burning some cars and, you know, some attempted murder and you know, a lot of looting and arson and vandalism and riot lines. Yeah, that's not rioting.
Certainly there was unrest. Any unlawful behavior.
Unlawful unrest. What would you call a group of protesters who became unlawful and experienced unrest? Perhaps riotous behavior. Would we be playing like the pyramid game where you're trying to guess synonyms of words?
Any unlawful behavior, people who assault police officers, who damage property, who break the law, they should be held accountable.
Yes, if you riot, you should be held accountable.
We will not be lectured by extreme MAGA Republicans about questions of law and order. Are you?
Yes. Yes, those extreme MAGA cities of mostly peaceful protests. Yes, good for Hakeem. By the way, he did in fact get all Democrats in the House to either vote present or to vote against the condemnation of the Los Angeles riots. Fantastic. I can't fathom why the left is struggling on all fours right now, panting like a man dying of thirst. And by the way, this just kind of goes with the theme of the show. If you were curious as to why there are a lot of us on the right and those in America in the center who do not believe that the Republicans are in dire straits in the midterms, I was told as soon as the bombs from the B-2 fell on the Iranian nuclear site Fordo, as soon as the submarine missiles hit the Esfahan and Natanz nuclear facilities, I was told there it is, there's the midterms, it's all done, it's over, pack it up, everything's over. First of all, as we've pointed out before, the polls show the exact opposite of that. You know what, actually, here is Harry Enton doing his analysis over on CNN. Obviously, we've played some of his stuff before. Here's a reminder of how popular these actions were.
Yeah, you know, I think there's this idea, okay, maybe the MAGA base wouldn't necessarily like this. Look, this is Donald Trump's Republican Party. That's what I think is so important to note. GOP on the U.S. airstrikes in Iran, 76% in the average of the two polls approve, compared to just 18% who disapprove. Now, I will note that is a bit higher than Donald Trump's disapproval rating within the Republican Party. But overall, Republicans are with Donald Trump on this. Tucker Carlson be darned. The bottom line is he does not speak for the majority of the Republican base.
Okay, so there's not just a lot of support for the president's actions from the Republican side, it's also in the independent side. Even a lot of Democrats support these actions. So if you don't have this, then what on earth are you supposed to do? The Democrats' approval rating right now in Congress is 17%, 1-7. The only Democrat with a lower approval rating than that is Mayor Brandon Johnson of Chicago, who is currently, by the way, being lectured by his own citizens in Chicago. We'll get to that in the next segment. But if you really wanted to know why a lot of Republicans aren't currently pulling out their hair over the midterms, it's because going to vote is like going to the DMV. It sucks. It's annoying. It is not something anyone enjoys. It is a hassle. And therefore, the question of voting is not how do I be less awful than the other party? The question is how can I get more of my people to go to the DMV than my opponents can get to go to the DMV. The fact of the matter is, a lot of Republicans are just going to come out and vote anyway, because Republicans are, by the books, by the data available, more civically responsible, meaning more Republicans are likely to consistently come out to vote over their lives than Democrats. Democrats essentially go through phases. It's a phase, mom, that kind of a thing. So if Democrats can't even get people out to vote next November, and Republicans kind of bring the same mediocre, lackluster performance already, that's pretty much keeping the House and Senate. But if Republicans are able to energize based on a series of popular with Americans successes in the midterms, and you have a bunch of Democrats who are retiring from the Senate, not looking too good. Not looking too good. Then you have people like Bernie Sanders. He's kind of the leader that you didn't even know you wanted. He's going on the Joe Rogan with the hip kids. Back home from his exciting tour around the country with AOC and the Latina woman, I'm going to look at her on stage. Now he's on with Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan, who's a lot kinder to people on the left than those like yours truly, he doesn't have any time for Bernie Sanders either. We're going to play that clip over on the live stream radio crew. See you in a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Here's Bernie Sanders on the Joe Rogan show.
What it says is you're a billionaire. You have now the constitutional right, because your money is your freedom of expression, right? So you don't like Bernie Sanders? You can put millions or hundreds of millions of dollars into a campaign and express your view about how terrible Bernie Sanders is, right? And you can buy that election, right? That's your constitutional right.
All right, so just as a little clear there, he immediately swoops in and goes, you can say this with your money, and then he makes the accusation. This is how those on the left do this. They slip it in. So you can spend with your money. You can get out all your dollar bills that you got. Of course, you're working your job, not like me. I got mine from all of the political donations. And then you can buy an election. Buy it right over at Ralph's. You can buy it and package it home today. No, just donating money does not secure an election. I give you Exhibit A, the Wisconsin Supreme Court election. Elon Musk forked over dough. In fact, he forked over so much dough, he was giving away grand prizes for registering to vote. It's like, you get out there, you register to vote, you'll be in a raffle to win $1 million. And he didn't end up pushing enough people over to get them out to vote. So as for it buys the elections, they get out all the lobbyists. I mean, no, it's unfortunately for you, you're wrong. Joe Rogan doesn't miss it here.
I think that's probably the worst decision that the Supreme Court has ever made. So what is the result of that decision? The result of that decision, let's take us to where we are today, is that Elon Musk, and I know Elon was on your show, and he's here at Austin, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. And we could talk about Elon, but he spent $270 million to elect Trump as president. Okay. I think that's absurd that any one person...
What's the most someone donated towards the Harris campaign?
They spent a lot of money on Harris as well.
They spent $1.5 billion just
combined
over the course of a couple of months.
You got it. All right, let me talk about it. So I'm not here just to say it's a Republican.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Then there's, I'm not... If your argument is that the more money buys the election, then I should see the correlative data that shows that, it's got to be like 99%. It can't be like 75%. If you are going to say that a correlation equals causation, then I better be seeing presidential elections where are always bought out every single time. And that's just not the case anymore. It's not. Because buying TV ads doesn't do much anymore. It doesn't do the same thing. It's a totally different market. Now, after we get past this, you can really start to understand why the Democrats are in such a rough place. They have lost people like Joe Rogan. They have lost Elon Musk. They lost Donald Trump, who used to be a Democrat. They lost Tulsi Gabbard. They are losing actively John Fetterman. If John Fetterman finishes out his term in office, if he finishes out his term as a Democrat, I will be very surprised. I'm not saying he's going to be a Republican. The dude votes to the left. I do not and will never likely endorse Fetterman's voting record. However, it is likely he becomes an independent. He becomes a Joe Manchin-like figure. So with people like Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, who are now saying that in these hypothetical situations, they might caucus with the Democrats and kind of that kind of a thing. On the left side of the aisle, it's just not looking good. It's not looking good at all. There's no bench. There's no leadership. Gavin Newsom is waltzing out in front of the whole country, suggesting that what we really need right now is more gas taxes. What did you say? It's like a 70-cent tax increase? That's wild. That's why. And I live in Indiana. Indiana's got some ridiculously high gas price taxes. We're going to catch the radio crew. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Now, I did tell you a little earlier in the show that it's not just at Congress where Democrats are taking it on the chin. It's also over in the wonderful glory land of Chicago. Mayor Brandon Johnson, he came out in front of the country and said, we're going to give out special business loans to black people, which is very, 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 very illegal. You cannot discriminate based on race or an immutable characteristic if you are giving out taxpayer money. And in fact, depending on private entities, you have to be very careful as well. So Brandon Johnson then doubled down and made the case that not only would he continue to do this, he would also boast about only hiring black women to certain positions in the city, which is, again, very, very, very illegal. And now he is either preparing for or is actively under federal investigation. And he's still hosting town halls. Again, he has like a 9% approval rating in Chicago, which is just incredible. How someone could beat out Lori Lightfoot is, I didn't know that Beetlejuice could be a better figure than somebody, but I mean, Brandon Johnson's really shown her. Well, it's not even popular among the communities in Chicago that he's targeting. So, here's a young black man coming out to shame Brandon Johnson for the kind of racial discrimination that has arguably ruined the city of Chicago.
Thank the DOJ for opening up an investigation on the mayor's insane, out-of-control DEI hiring. You said in a recent interview that black people don't just look out for ourselves, but for everyone else as well. Well, clearly they're not getting the memo because they're destroying downtown and they're destroying the city with things like teen takeover. And when you say things like this, it just makes you look more incompetent and racist as a mayor. You need to start pushing more law and order in the city of Chicago. Help the police do their job. I am asking you all to vote for the curfew and make the curfew time permanent for teens. Hold the parents accountable as well. Teens are doing majority of the crime, and you know it, Brandon Johnson.
Now, you heard a little bit of booing, like a smidgen. That smidgen of booing came from the back of the room where an individual at the event has stated it was like a Brandon Johnson staffer. It turns out that people are tired of getting shot. New York City is voting on a mayoral primary this evening where the front runner as of now is an open communist. And you think this is going to make you more popular to people in the country? You haven't learned yet that just saying someone is racist and homophobic and transphobic and cisgender fatphobic, that's not a winning strategy? and you're still going with this? Even Joy Reid is announced that the Democrat Party doesn't even have it together.
I've been a Democrat since I was old enough to vote, but I'm barely hanging on, honestly, because at this point, the party is not bigger than the future of my kids. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I have 3 children. I have, a daughter and 2 sons that have to live in this country as Black people. And fascism don't work for me.
Fascism
and
don't
I'm
work
not
for me.
willing to cede the country to Trumpism and MAGA simply because I'm clinging to this party.
Okay. So, like I said, totally fine. Totally not falling apart at the seams. And to make matters funnier, I should say, you even have some of the goofballs that the Democrats were clinging to, like Adam Schiff, for instance, old Shifty Schiff, pencil neck. He's come out and, I didn't have this one on my bingo card.
If this ceasefire takes effect or it remains in effect, that will be a very strong positive for the whole region, indeed for the whole world. It will mean that no U.S. service members were injured in Iran's retaliation against our base in Qatar. It will mean, hopefully, an end to the fighting between Israel and Iran and the loss of life as a result of that war. It will also mean that, at least for now, Iran has chosen not to escalate because of the vulnerability of the regime, because of the weakening of its defenses by Israel, and for a host of other reasons. So if this holds, that will be an unmitigated positive.
Well, I mean, boy howdy. How do you even mount some kind of an offense to fight this? What do? I'll tell you what you do. You get out John Kerry and his old wobbly jaw goofy nonsense. You drag him out. Again, the individual who genuinely, I feel, always looks like he's just been beaten senselessly by the mob, John Kerry.
I do think people have to be realistic here in understanding what the choices are. Iran is a proud nation. One of the things.
Iranian people are not the regime. The people of Iran, whom are beaten and slaughtered by the Ayatollah and the mullahs, are not the same as the regime itself. Kerry, Barack, Ben Rhodes, aka Hamas, they have no idea that there is a difference between the people in North Korea and the regime in North Korea, the people in China and the regime of China. No idea.
I learned in my negotiations was the level of pride was just enormous. They also have been committed to the destruction of Israel. That's a cultural, almost religious component of their policy. And so it's very hard to say what exactly is going to bring them back to the table. But I know this, you cannot bomb away the memory of how to make a bomb. You can't bomb away the knowledge that they have developed. You can't.
Okay, we're going to have this conversation here because I am a former science teacher. And while I was probably more towards the biology side, I do understand a good amount of physics and a good amount of chemistry. My producer over there, producer Nick in studio, is in fact a very, very intelligent chemist. That's one of the things that he was very good at. Now, we know a fair amount that's legal to know about how enrichment of uranium and plutonium goes, about how the process one would need to understand to make a nuclear weapon. I get the concept. That's really complex, right? This isn't something you just keep in your head. Like you did memorizing like the equations that often take place in like metabolism. That isn't how this works. So John Kerry thinking that like you can just pass it word of mouth, like we're getting bombed, here we go, give you, and like start like repeating all of the instructions for making a nuke. That's not a thing. And the IDF has made a very, very, very good effort at destroying not only the Iranian research, but also all of the backups of Iranian research. Iran has openly admitted now that all of its nuclear scientists are dead. They are gone. And that all of the research data that they had has either been corrupted, lost, or destroyed. Fordo ain't kicking. And by the way, the rumor that the uranium was like snuck out of Fordo, has officially been disproven. That's been debunked. The satellite footage of them bringing the uranium out, no. And even if they had, we can track where fissile material goes based on the kind of radiation that it gives off. And people wonder why the Obama administration is just not popular. I tell you what, just because I didn't get through everything this evening, we'll stick around for a smidgen of bonus tonus on the live stream. Radio crew, have a wonderful evening. We'll see you tomorrow. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. All right, live stream crew, I have just a couple of things just for you. And I do mean, you're going to love this. On CNN, our good friend Scott Jennings, friend of the show, is essentially holding that network up with his own two hands and invited on the panel to discuss Trump's decisions about Israel and Iran that brought on Cornel West. Now, Cornel West, as many of you will know him, is a nutcase and a lunatic. And I don't mean the same kind of lunatic that I mean the guy like Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine Crockett, who is like the crackhead sitting outside of your gas station at 4 a.m, who you're trying to go in and grab a Mountain Dew or a Celsius before the day starts, and then there's this crackhead who starts like saying really weird stuff when you're trying to walk in. That's Jasmine Crockett. That's her game. Cornel West is not like this. Cornel West is a very smart, crazy person. Cornel West is a mad scientist kind of character, only instead of studying things that are useful like sciences, Cornel West has studied philosophy. The first time that I read Cornel West, I was beginning in college. And after university, after I was back working in Indiana, and I was in this education publication called Chalkboard Review, I was invited by Jeremy Wayne Tate, he's the guy who founded the classical learning test, out to Annapolis, where Robert P. George, a professor from Princeton, and on the right, and then Cornel West on the left, were essentially going to speak to us. And I got to have a really great 20-30 minute conversation with Cornel West. And the dude's insane, but he's the smart kind of insane. Cornel West is what I would argue the kind of insane that's dangerous. The kind that would argue why it's a good thing that Mao slaughtered millions of people. But Cornel West isn't necessarily insane in the pure Marxist ideals. He's insane in the racial reparation side of things. This man knows the writings of Paulo Freire better than most people, better than most old ladies know the Bibles down in the Bible Belt. So Cornel West, he is on CNN with Scott Jennings, sorry for that long explanation there, and arguing about why it was a horrible, terrible thing for the United States, in fact, to strike Iran. And his argument is not Iran is going to strike us back kind of argument. It is much more disturbing and, in essence, just flat out sinister.
The United States,
you can't violate national sovereignty of a country.
Why?
Why?
We do it all the time.
I know, because America violates international law all the time.
Who's going to stop us?
Decades, you would think morality ought to play some role.
You think it's immoral to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon?
I think that any condition.
Who's the moral actor here, Iran or the United States?
In terms of ensuring that we don't have nuclear bombs anywhere?
No, in terms of ensuing these butchers don't have nuclear bombs. If they have fully said they will use.
All right, so let me break this down for you in the classic Cornel West style of what's going on. So he makes the case that the United States is bad because it violated sovereign law. So that because the United States had intervened, that this made us bad. Because apparently in the idea of the left-wing narrative that also wraps around to this horseshoe narrative on the right that individuals like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Dave Smith have espoused, every country has this deep moral grounding that gives them this sovereign ability to essentially be right in their own nationalism. So if Iran does something, and it's a very grave, evil something, then you can't say boo about it. You may criticize it from afar, but essentially Iran can do whatever it wants because it's its own nation. And if you do anything, that makes you bad because they are a sovereign country. That's stupid. That's retarded. That's not how it works. It's not. And Cornel West makes the case that the United States, because it has nuclear weapons, can't say boo about another country having nuclear weapons. I'm sorry, that's also retarded. I own guns. I do. That does not mean that I'm going to sit here and relax if someone shows up on my property with a gun, or if my kids pick up a firearm and start swinging it around. Both of those situations do not involve me necessarily. But my ability to say you can't have a gun on my property within striking distance of me, or you're a child, you don't understand what you're doing, I don't trust you, therefore you're not allowed to swing around a firearm. Those are not immoral positions. Now, Scott Jennings, as great as he is pushing his buttons on this one a little bit, but Cornel West is making this weird equivocation that we've talked about the entire evening, that some people believe the United States is just as stinky and awful and terrible as the worst countries that have ever been on the face of the earth. And if you believe that, you are either willingly or accidentally ignorant.
On Israel?
Well, we got a lot to discuss. We've got United States, Israel.
There's no equivocation.
Scott, what they've done in Gaza gives neither one of them moral authority. That's a genocide, it's ethnic cleansing. Israel has no moral authority. The United States has no moral authority.
Disagree.
You think that some... No, we just had deep disagreements on that. But I'd like to hear your Christian formulation.
So your alternative...
The Christian formulation on that. I've heard this from some of the isolationists right as well. So let's talk about it here. So, in the United States and around the world, we have in fact seen countries, including our own, that have done really terrible things. That does not give you or anyone else the sentencing of carrying around your father's sins for eternity. That's ridiculous. I did not choose to keep people in slavery. I did not enforce Jim Crow laws. Neither did any of you. And so to say that, well, that means you're responsible for all of those moral evils and you can't do anything else around the world because your country has deep moral, like a bad history or whatever, that's ridiculous. By the way, my relatives and many relatives here who are listening in the audience fought to end those things in the Civil Rights Movement, in the Civil War, in the Second World War, in the First World War when it was the Kaiser that was running around acting like an idiot. So it turns out that the historical building block nonsense, which is what racial reparationism, DEI, critical race theory relies on, is ridiculous. It is. It is ridiculous. And all the way back to the Native American situation. I am a federally registered member of a Native American tribe. And do you know how much that matters to me? Zero. It doesn't matter what tribe conquered who, when, where, what. That is of no consequence. Now, what is of consequence? Individuals who commit crimes to you today are responsible for those crimes today. This is where the media completely screwed the pooch on Los Angeles. Because as soon as you saw people that were throwing bricks and chunks of concrete and setting things on fire, what did they immediately go back to? Well, historically, Mexico back in the 1820s actually owns, and there's a lot of racial issues in the back that had nothing to do with it. I'm sorry, if you were beaten as a child, that does not give you the right to be abusive as an adult. It doesn't. Is it a horrible thing that happened to you? Absolutely. If your grandfather was beaten as a child, that absolutely does not give you the authority or the right to beat someone else. How about no? And if you go into a country on October the 7th and you rape and kill and murder and all of the other kinds of horrible things that happened, do not then run behind your own civilians and say, oh, no, I'm hiding behind civilians. You can't get me. Nope. Consequences. Sorry. I won't be lectured on that. And as for genocides and ethnic cleansing, just for the record, that would be the very first ethnic cleansing or genocide on Earth in which the population increased during the genocide or ethnic cleansing. Spare me. Spare me. I'm just not here for it. Because at the end of the day, the same crew who has told you this is exactly how it is, that, oh, the United States is a slave to the Jews and all this other nonsense, have been wrong on foreign policy and every other kind of policy. Every prediction they have put forward to you is wrong. It is wrong. It has just been, and now they're trying to run victory laps, saying, oh, we pressured Trump to change his mind. No, you didn't. I watched Trump call individuals on that side who were saying that the United States is terrible, evil, and Israel's awful, and all this other nonsense, called them kooky and stupid, and a whole lot of other stuff that wasn't exactly put out on microphone. A lot similar to the statements this morning. These people were wrong. The Cornel Wests on the left, the Candace Owens on the right, they were wrong. They have been consistently wrong. And when you go outside and you touch grass and you talk to real people and you go to church with real Americans, you find out that a lot more people believe in the kind of stuff that's actually going on instead of what some comic who doesn't even know who fought on which side in World War II believes. And that's a massive victory. That's a massive victory. To see the Trump administration doing things that do resonate with regular, average, everyday Americans. So, that all said, I want to encourage absolutely everyone to have a wonderful evening. Hope there's no breaking news tonight or tomorrow, but knowing our luck, I'm sure there will be. So I hope you have a wonderful night. We'll see you tomorrow. Same great time, same great place. If you would do us a bit of a favor here, head down to the description. Subscribe to the show. That really helps us out over on the YouTube channel as well. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here at the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.